Welcome everyone. Today we are going to be identifying independent and dependent variables as well as making tables. So you have done a lot of work with independent and dependent variables. Remember, the dependent variable depends on the independent variable. So for example, we could make a statement saying something like if your two variables were the amount you made and the number of hours you work, we could say the amount you make depends on the number of hours you work. So therefore, the number of hours would be the independent variable, because the amount you make depends. So your pay would be the dependent variable. So I want you to think about how this relates to your science experiment. What were your dependent, independent variables, and how did you know which was which? For this lesson, you will be reading a description of a situation, and from that description you'll decide what your two variables are and which is the independent and which is the dependent. And in this case you're going to make a table because the equation is given to you, but after this you're going to be writing the equation too. So Marcus reads, and remember to annotate or write out what it is that you know. He reads for 30 minutes each night, and he wants to determine the total number of minutes he will need to read over the course of a month. So he writes this equation where T is the total amount and D is the number of days that he reads during the month. Okay, so I'm going to write that down there. So the total amount of time, so total time equals 30, because he reads 30 minutes each day, times the number of days. Sometimes it helps me to write out the equation like this so I can see what each part means. Okay, so now you have to decide which is the independent, which is the dependent variable. The total time depends on the number of days he reads. The time depends on the number of days he reads. So since the time depends on the days, the dependent variable is the time, and the independent variable is the number of days. And the time is going to be in minutes. So when you're making a table from this first column is always the independent variable, and this second column is always the dependent variable. Because when you're graphing, this is going to be your x, and this is going to be your y. So here our independent is the number of days, and our dependent is the time in minutes. So it says for the first 7 days. So I'm going to start with, I guess, 1, 2, 3. Many times I start my tables with 0, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if we use this equation, T equals 30 times the number of days. If he read 1 day, he would have read 30 minutes. If he reads 2 days, he would read 60 minutes. If he read 3 days, so all I'm doing is taking my 30 and multiplying it by the number of days. That's 90 minutes, 120 minutes. So we can see different patterns. We can see that we're going up 30 every time, And we can see over here that we're just taking our number of days and multiplying it by 30. So I am writing this in so you can see what I am doing. So you can either count up by 30 every time or do that multiplication. Pretty easy. Alright, problem 2. Kira designs websites. She can create 3 websites each week. So 3 websites each week. And she wants to create an equation that will give her the total number of websites she can design in a certain number of weeks. So first we have to look at our variables, and then we're going to create a table and write an equation to show all of this. So here I'm going to think about what are my variables? What am I looking at? Many times that last sentence is a place to get help. Write an equation to represent the number of websites. So I know number of websites is something I'm looking at. She can design for any number of weeks. So number of weeks. So those are our 2 variables. Which one is the dependent? Which one is the independent? So you will. It's easier for me to make a statement. So do the number of websites depend on the number of weeks, or do the number of weeks depend on the website? The number of websites depends on the number of weeks she works. So since this is true, the number of websites is the dependent variable, and the number of weeks is the independent. So we're going to take our number of weeks to figure out the number of websites. So if she did 1 week, now remember, she can make 3 websites per week. So after 1 week, she made 3. After 2 weeks, she made 6. After 3, she made 9. After 4, she made 12. After 5, she made 15. So again, we're just every week we're adding 3 more, or we could take our number of weeks and multiply like that. So that leads us to our equation. We took our number of weeks. Let's name our variables first. Let W be the number of websites and T be time in weeks. So that means the number of websites would be 3 for each week. All right. Please read this one, so stop the video, read this one, and try to figure out the independent-dependent variable on your own. Start the table and then come back. This equation is going to be a little bit different. All right, this is what I have so far. So I picked out the information that I needed. She is streaming, and her monthly bill, we're looking at her total cost per month, given that she streams movies at a cost per movie. So we have to first decide on the independent-dependent variable. The total cost depends on the number of movies. Therefore, the total cost is the dependent variable because it depends on the number of movies. So that's the independent variable. So now it says, figure out the cost for the number of movies. But let's work on this equation. let's work on the equation. Her total cost, so I'm going to name my T for total cost, number of movies, M for movies. So you can use X and Y, whatever you want, but I'm going to do this as my T for cost. Actually, let's do C. C for cost, because many times we use T for time. C for cost, and M for number of movies. So her cost, this is really important, there is a $5 monthly fee. So even if she doesn't stream anything, she is still paying $5. And you have to add to that $1.50 per movie. So it's not just this, we have to have our independent variable in there. So it's like this. So at 0 movies, she would still be charged 5. It says between 4 and 10 movies, but I'm going to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Because I included that 0 in there, I'm only going to go up to 9. We can add a 10th one if you want. So if we use our equation to solve 5 plus 1.5 times 4, that gives me 5 plus 1.5 times 4 is 6. So it would cost $11 for 4 movies. And we could do the same thing using our equation, or we know that it's going up $1.50 for every movie. So I can just add $1.50 like this. So 14 plus $1.50 is $15.50. $15.50 plus $1.50 is 17, and then $18.50 and 20. And I'm just going to double check to make sure using my equation. 5 plus 1.5 times 10, that is 15. 15 plus 5 is 20. So there we go. All right, that's it. Let's work on the assignment. Ask questions if you have them. We out.